What's up, everybody? I'm back, and I'm feeling a bit under the weather. Probably caught something, and what's up, everybody? My phone is checking the volume. Sounds good, but probably caught something, and feeling pretty all right now. But we might keep it a short stream because I need my rest if this is not going to develop into anything more than it currently is. But feel fine now. I mean, I had some body aches last night that was pretty horrible. It was keeping me awake, but I took some Tylenol and then they went away. And for me to take Tylenol means like it's pretty intense. I also do look very pale right now. Let's see if we can bring down that lighting a bit. It's a little bit better, maybe. I don't know. Hold on. Seem to have lost sync with one of the lights, but that's alright. Hopefully it's not too bad. How's that? Look alright? Kind of. Whatever. But oh my gosh, these people. What is this nonsense spam that keeps coming up toward it? But I hope everybody had a great Christmas. If you celebrate Christmas, if not, then I hope you had a great day that was filled with doing anything that it is that you do. I grew up in a irreligious, I guess not irreligious, but like a anti-theistical Jewish household, which is really an atheist Jewish household, like a liberal Jewish household. And I don't mean liberal politically. I was politically like my parents voted right, but but God was never a part of my upbringing. But we still had a bunch of religious traditions that we did, or theological tradition-based traditions, but you could call them religious traditions. But I don't like the word religion, and we've talked about it before. I think that religion means nothing. Religion is a word created to describe something. It was a word created by atheists, who probably, but anti-theists more actually, to describe something that they do not understand. And the same thing goes with science, outside of the description of science as a method of question answering, I guess, of just testing through experimentation. Now science includes pretty much anything, and Eric Weinstein even has argued that it should include even more than it does. It should include, you take psychedelics and have an epiphany, and then you think that God told you the answer to some math problem, and then therefore that should be included as part of science. And I agree with what he's basically saying, but I don't think that science is a helpful term anymore outside of it being a method. And so, same with religion. Religion is not a helpful term anymore. But somebody had messaged me, and I wanted to talk a bit about this because it was Christmas. And I want to be personally honest. For those of you that don't know, I am Jewish, but I am definitely a theist at this point in my life. And I actually would also describe myself as a Christian. And I believe I meet that definition, which would be, anyone who believes that Jesus is the Messiah of humanity and will return to rule the world in some capacity. And I'm not saying you have to understand how that is, and I don't think anybody that really claims to definitely know how that's going to manifest understands it. And I say that as somebody who probably has a better understanding of it than most people. And that includes theologians and as well as anybody who is, more scientifically inclined and focused on singularity. But that sounds like something that's almost disqualifying of me from speaking about any topics with a scientific bend to them. And as I stated in our stream about bad words, religion and science were both included in that list of bad words, and they were both said to be essentially, and most things on that list, labels of a tone, like having a scientific tone or feel to something, or having a religious tone or feel to how we are discussing something, or having an esoteric feel or tone to how we are describing something. And they're all very similar. A very reasonable tone, a very spiritual tone, a very logical tone. These are all feelings or tones to a certain that are aligned with a certain feel of how we describe something. And that's probably the most accurate way of using these words like religion, esoteric, science, outside of it being a method. Because religion, you can't even use it as to describe, Islam versus Christianity. Islam versus Christianity are not two different religions. They're two theological traditions that are actually part of a grander theological tradition that you can understand when you actually start looking at it as a whole, which is the Abrahamic tradition, which is probably part of an even bigger theological tradition, which is the human theological tradition, which would include the theological traditions of the East, and or the spiritual traditions, you could say, of the East, whatever you want to call them. The metaphysical traditions of the East, like Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and there's truth in all of them. The only thing that's definitely false is the idea that they are all fake except for one. They're all Satanism except for one, or something like that. That is fake. I mean, I really do believe that. It's possible that I'm wrong, and I know that people who are, ascribe themselves to their, specific faith tradition would very often disagree with me. But I will say that I think that if you think that your faith tradition is the only one with truth in it, the rest are just going to have no purpose in this world from God, and that their scriptures are just false, and everybody's scriptures are false except for yours, I would say that that's much more likely that to be a case of idol worship of a theological tradition of religion. And you can idol worship religion, and when you do, it leads to violence when it's done en masse. And so somebody in my Instagram comments, I posted this picture of Jesus in this beautiful painting that I took. I took this photo of this painting that is the top of a church in Los Angeles, and it's an Eastern Orthodox church in Los Angeles, and I was shooting a wedding there because I was a wedding photographer for quite some time. And above you is this beautiful mandala painting of Jesus looking down, and I just thought it was beautiful, so I took a photo of it. And for the past couple of years, I've posted it on Christmas, and the caption that I post with it is, "You have to give everything for everyone to be everything to everyone." This is a phrase that I came up with to describe what I think is a requirement of the Messiah. And we can get into what that means. And I'm going to talk about it a bit on the stream. And a family member of mine, who is an anti-theist to begin with, but also Jewish, and thought that to believe that Jesus is the Messiah is to renounce your Judaism, essentially, which that's not true at all. And if you want to understand the Abrahamic traditions, at least, look at how they define a follower of one of the traditions. What makes you Muslim? What do you have to do to be Muslim? What do you have to do to be Jewish? What do you have to do to be Christian? And these will tell you how these will help you understand the interaction between these faith traditions and or theological traditions. I don't even like faith traditions because I don't have faith in God. I have knowledge of God. I have wisdom of God, or the wisdom of God's existence, I will say. I know God exists. I don't believe I know. And I know people will say, you can't know. Yes, you can know. But it's just not up to you whether or not you know, but you can know. You can look back on other videos that I've done to see my stories regarding that, but one of them is called, has in its title, like, Seeing God or something like that. It's a few back, probably like 6 or 7 streams back. You can watch that, it explains, but you can know that God exists, but it's just not up to you whether or not you know. And so somebody messaged me, though, and when I posted this photo of Jesus, and they said, this is religion, or they commented, and I was like, what is religion? And that is a very important question to ask yourself, like, what is religion? And but I will just say, my father was the one who was asking me. He asked me once, what makes. He was just not comfortable when I told him that I thought Jesus was the Messiah, because, like, I had been an atheist my entire life, or self-described, really an anti-theist. I thought God did not exist. That means you are an anti-theist. And he said to me, well, why Jesus? Why not Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who is a guy who was the Rebbe of Chabad Judaism and is thought by many Hasidic Jews to be the Messiah, and that he died in the 1990s or early 2000s, and that they think he will come back and be the Messiah one day. So Jews that say things like, oh, well, you can't die prior to being the, fulfilling all of the things necessary to, be done by the Messiah and still be the Messiah. Tell that to the Chabad Jews, who are currently the, preeminent Jewish scholarly sect in the world. They tend to agree with Christianity in the mechanism of the Messiah, that somebody has to die and then come back, or at least has to appear to die. And the Muslims believe that that Jesus is the Messiah, that he will come back and rule. And does that mean that they're Christian? So, this is complicated a bit, but it's actually really simple. It seems complicated, but what's interesting about Jesus is that he is the most famous person to ever live. There is no one who comes within 1/10 of the fame of Jesus. And there never will be. It's probably impossible at this point for anybody to overtake the noteworthiness or the familiarity of humanity with Jesus. I don't think anybody can become more famous, and I think that's relevant. But it's not even a competition. It's not even a competition. There's no one who comes close. Muhammad doesn't come close, peace be upon him, and Buddha doesn't come close, peace be upon him. Like, I am not here to rip on any of these people, and they're not. But the thing is that people that say, well, Jesus versus Muhammad. It's not Jesus versus Muhammad. Muhammad thought Jesus was the Messiah. Jesus is the penultimate prophet and the Messiah in Islam. So there is no Jesus versus Muhammad or Jesus versus Buddha necessarily. They're different, and they have different roles in human in the evolution of societal wisdom, I guess, of humanity. And so I'm not here to degrade any traditions or scriptures. I think pretty much all of them are true for the most part. Any of the big ones. I'm not going to sit here and defend everything or everyone or every action taken in the name of these quote unquote religions or theological traditions. We humans use everything as justification for evil. And the idea that religion or quote unquote or theological traditions or scriptures or historical figures have been used for the justification of violence and evil actions by people is not at all relevant to whether or not there is truth in the scriptures. Just because people in the name of Christianity or Islam or Judaism or Buddhism or Hinduism commit acts of violence does not invalidate the value of any of these traditions, scriptures, or figures. It does not. So humans have been incredibly violent in the name of democracy in the past, and they will be again in the future. Humans have been incredibly violent towards each other in the name of communism and capitalism and socialism and any other ism. And that is something that will always be the case. So I don't think that this is something that we should focus on when we're examining whether or not, what is the truth in something. And there is always truth in everything because there's really only one pattern. So, you can pull from that pattern, but you can't really pull from outside that pattern when you are creating anything. Even if you're trying to create a fake religion, it's going to end up mirroring some real patterns, I guess. And Jordan Peterson talks about archetypes, and he relates it to different stories, and it's funny because when you look at things like Harry Potter, it's the story of the chosen one, and at the end he has to die and then come back in order to defeat the evil one, and he's like this meek, like unassuming kind of person that you wouldn't think of as the chosen one, I guess. Same thing with Star Wars. You have Anakin Skywalker is this little orphan boy who is conceived without any male, and grows up to basically lose his soul, you could say, so almost die, and then comes back and is redeemed redeeming in the end, in a way. So but even then it's like you follow it to the new ones, which are not great. But I actually didn't there were some aspects of the latest one that were okay, but then I still think it was a horrible movie. The last three were horrible movies. But you can see that, Kylo Ren he starts off evil. That's different, but he dies and then, or he gives his life essentially to save, Rey. Like, there is this concept of like total sacrifice and I guess irony that occurs in all of these stories. Even Captain America, where they're deciding who gets to be Captain America, and they're looking at all the strong guys in the movie, and I think it's like one of the generals just pops a fake grenade and he throws it onto the ground to see who's going to sacrifice themselves to save everybody, and all the huge strong guys, book it and hide and to try and take care of themselves, and then you have this meek little guy who is Captain America before he's Captain America, and he jumps on the grenade, and it's fake, so it doesn't matter, but that moment is what qualified him essentially for being elevated to this like immortal, type of status where he can't die almost, and he's some type of savior, some type of hero. And so there's this pattern that is found everywhere, and that means that there's going to be truth in every theological tradition, in every single film series, and there's going to be similarities and things like that. It's not just that people do it consciously, it's that you can't help but do it. And sometimes people do it consciously, but you still can't help but do it. You cannot create a story that resonates with the human soul, or the human consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that is about some guy who has just been strong all his life, never really been, failure at anything. He's never had that much struggles. He was born the best looking, the strongest, the fastest, the bravest, and the most moral, and then he just continues to be that throughout his entire life, and then he just, saves us all. Nobody wants to watch that. Why do we never want to watch that? It's because it doesn't resonate with us at all. And I don't think I think that that's partially because it's untrue. So I'm not here to be an evangelist for Christianity. I'm just explaining my perspective, and kind of just explaining how it has been used currently as a disqualifier in the world that calls itself the scientific community. And I was watching this interview recently, this past weekend, or last week, and it was with Eric Weinstein and Brian Keating. It was like 2021 a year in review. And I'm going to show it, and there is a clip there where Eric discusses how the scientific community does not even give any papers that are papers that are proposing the idea of creationism as any kind of chance at all. And we can look at that, because this is, I don't actually like to discuss who is the Messiah too much. The only things that I will say that I think are relevant are most relevant to think about is, for me, I think the idea that if you're going to be the savior of the tree of life, essentially, which is what the Messiah is, it's just the next. It's the first. It is the first individual of the next level of life. So, like the first cell from molecules, that would be like a messianic consciousness. At some point, a molecule sacrificed itself for the group. This is my theory, and it's in Sentient Singularity Theory. For the sake of uniting the group's attention, essentially. And same thing with, at some point, an atom sacrifices itself for the sake of uniting the group's attention, and you get the first molecule. And at a certain point, molecule sacrifices itself for the sake of uniting the group's attention, and you get the first cell. And at some point, a cell sacrifices itself for the sake of uniting the group's attention, and you get the first organism, the first multicellular organism. So I believe sacrifice is part of this evolutionary process. It's not. I've never set out to convince people of the Bible or the Quran or anything like that in this project, but I'm also going to be honest with my anybody viewing my content of my personal beliefs, and I don't think I could convince you of the truth I see in Scripture. I think that you either see it or you don't. But the idea that there is a sacrificial act that is part of the up-leveling aspect of evolution, which is half of the evolutionary process in Sentient Singularity Theory. There's adaptation and ascension, which is, or up-leveling, whatever you want to call it. I call it ascension in my paper. This ascension process, or mathematically, I call this process replication and stacking. So you replicate a bunch of cells, and then there's also this stacking process where like an organism is stacked on top of cells. So I am stacked on top of the assembly of my cells. So there's a replication aspect and a stacking aspect. Then humans replicate, and then what is stacked on top of us is the question. Something, just like organisms are stacked on top of cells. And this is pretty consistent with Scripture, but not going to get too into that right now. But I don't think it's also possible for us to know the metaphysical nuts and bolts of and details of that process. And I think there's an element of choice involved by both the sentient being that is sacrificing itself, and also God. Like there is a mathematical, logical aspect of evolution, which is adaptation, and it's about selective pressures and sexual selection and natural selection, and this is just a mathematical equation essentially. But then there is also a choice aspect to it, and it is who gets to be the one who creates the first, and maybe is the first. We don't know, and that's the part that I'm saying is hard to know. The first organism from cells, but there does have to be some type of coherence between the levels, and that is why I think that there may be an ascension process happening that's not just about creation of organisms for the first time from cells, but maybe a cell becomes the consciousness of the next level, at least at first, just the first individual, not all of them, but just the first one, at least just the first, because this preserves coherence of information as you ascend through the periodicity of conscious awareness, of consciousness and life, I guess you could say. So there has to be information coherence from bottom to top, from top to bottom, and that means that you can't have totally separate levels, and that means there has to be some type of bridge between them, bridge between going from cells to organisms. And this is proving that is not something I'm sure we can do. I think it's something that can be proven to us maybe by God, but not something we can necessarily prove. But I do think that we can see the rest of the process that's not the choice aspect of it, of between God and the organism or being that is potentially going able to accept this role, I guess, of uniting the attention of the assembly that it is the next level must be stacked on top of. So that makes some sense. But this video with Eric Weinstein and Brian Keating is great. It's one of my favorite interviews that I've seen in a while, to be honest. Lots of great information in there. And, a lot of moral discussion regarding family and children and things that I talk about quite a bit. About basically that the antinatalism is a really big problem right now. And it's not founded in logic the way that people portray it to be. It's just, we must stop having children for the sake of the environment or something like that. This is something Chris Langan said, and it is probably my most fundamental disagreement with Chris. In fact, I would say it's definitely my most fundamental disagreement with Chris Langan. We tend to agree on almost everything except that. So, see if my internet will allow for.
That person writes to me. Well, okay, so we need better ways of dismissing claims that aren't this wholesale, you can't talk to somebody. Like one of the things that we have is in the neo-Darwinian world, we have a claim, no creationist paper has ever passed peer review. Okay, so you're staking everything on the idea that you have a filter and that nothing has ever gotten through the filter. Well, what if somebody does a pretty terrific study of something and then they leave the door open to creationism? Are we going to lose the science because they made an offhand remark at the end of their paper that maybe we have to rethink things, and it could be, it might not even be a creationist paper. Well, as soon as you come up with these rules, like, no scientist has ever done it. It's a desire for artificial cleanliness. Is what it is. And I think that what we've got to recognize is that a lot of the people that you see who are giving you this heat are coming at it from this different perspective, which is, I want Oumuamua to go away. I want Avi Loeb taking this serious. I want to just say he's a careerist and that this is just an attempt to get money. And I understand where that's coming from, but it's also an incredibly destructive impulse. I mean, can you imagine if when Benjamin Jeste took cow pus and stuck it into his family to try to keep them safe from smallpox, what would be said about him on Twitter?
Right. Whereas you and I.
Okay, so, I mean, I know why Eric Weinstein is saying what he's saying, and for one, it's because it's true. He's right, and it's also because geometric unity will leave the door open for creationism. Well, I'm betting on that for multiple reasons, but I mean, I've had a conversation with Eric about it before, and I'm not saying that I agree with exactly what I'm about to say, but I do essentially agree that this is how it looks. And that basically it looks like we're inside of a mind that created the universe and is doing so for a specific purpose. Like, is that creationism? I think so. I mean, I definitely think it is. Like, that. If that's not creationism, I don't know what is. But I mean, I'll take it further than that. But Eric definitely believes that I like I said, I agree. This is how it looks, and it might be how it is. That that the constraints of creating a universe are so tight that there's only one way to do it, and that basically the emergence of the structure of the universe would be almost entirely natural. And I agree with that, actually, like in how it manifests from our perspective, at least. I definitely agree with that that's how it looks. And it might be how it is. I mean, I understand where the constraint comes from, and I don't see a way to avoid that constraint, but I also try not to put limits on God outside of my own perception, but I recognize that within my perception, God is constrained by his oneness, and in that is such tight constraint that it creates rules that only allow for a universe to emerge one way. It doesn't mean there's no instances of choice involved in this process. Of course, I think that there are, but there is no choice in how in the mathematical logical laws of the universe. It doesn't appear like there's choice. There might be beyond our perception, and I recognize that. Like I said, I don't want to put limits on God, but it appears that the constraints come from his oneness, which I don't know if he can, I don't know a way around that, to be honest. But Sentient Singularity Theory, my work with it would propose that it was definitely a choice, and only could be a choice, to create a universe. So the creation of the universe had to be a choice. A total choice. An instance of free will by God which is sentient existence, to decide to create multiplicity of consciousness within their oneness of consciousness. It was a conscious choice, an intentional choice. And that it had to be. But it also states that once that choice is made, how it's done, there's very little choice involved. Like God could not decide whether or not, there were 8, not necessarily, there were 8, levels in the periodicity of life, or whether or not there are 4 dimensions to space-time. This is not something that is a choice, at least that appears to be a choice by God. It might be beyond any ability for us to understand, but if it is, then it would probably be beyond any of our ability to understand, because it seems to come from just having intrinsic oneness and nothing but beyond yourself. And that aspect is almost like a defining characteristic of God. So it's difficult to see a way around that, but I'm not, like I said, not God. So maybe he did choose to write all the beautiful laws that we have, but maybe he had no choice. I don't know. I don't. If he did choose it, then that's just beyond our ability to understand. And I would honestly, for the sake of just this is my faith part of this is where I'm going to claim that I'm going to make a statement of faith. If I had to bet, I would bet on that, just because that is because of the beauty of our universe. If it was just intrinsic, I don't think it would be so necessarily so beautiful. But at the same time, is it possible for us to see the truth as truly the absolute truth, not like the subjective truth, but the absolute total truth as ugly? Probably not. So it's difficult to know. But it's not really worth thinking about in the immediacy. It's the ultimate question, I will say. If you had to ask, what is the ultimate question? If you knew all the answers within the universe, what is the ultimate question still? It's exactly what Einstein proposed as the ultimate question, which was, did God have any choice when he wrote the laws of the universe? And what's interesting is that when you're looking at geometric unity, the paper that Eric wrote on geometric unity, right here. This is the very beginning of the paper. What really interests me is whether God, should be capital, had any choice in the creation of the world. Albert Einstein to Ernst Strauss. This is a fascinating question to ask. and it will lead you either, probably to extraordinary boredom and just giving up, or it will lead you to 69-page attempt on the theory of everything. But dang, this is long. I've not gone through this. I've skimmed it, but I've not gone through it. I've been focusing on my own paper, which is coming soon in January. It's 30 pages right now. It's not going to be as long as Eric's. I don't want it to be either, but I do wonder whether or not that was an intentionally chosen number, given that it was on what is it? April Fool's Day. Oh my gosh. Guys, I probably have the virus. I don't even know if you can say it. Probably have COVID. Hopefully I can say it. And so give me some slack. Hopefully it doesn't get any worse than it is right now, or it doesn't get much worse. I have a slightly runny nose, and I have body aches, and so does my wife, and they're pretty intense body aches, but I keep taking Tylenol, which I never take Tylenol or Advil, so if I take it, it is intense body aches. But there's also this wonderful, I want to say wonderful book, but I'll say incredibly thorough and rigorous. This was, by the way, last stream. I think it was last stream. I had a word to describe interviews that were being done by Kurt Jaimungal that just escaped me, and I also could have used it later on in my stream as well, and I just could not remember it. As soon as the stream ended, I remembered it. The word is rigor. So what I was trying to say last stream was Kurt's interviews are very rigorous. They are the most rigorous interviews online that I've seen of people involving this type of discussion. But what if there was a paper with quite a bit of logical and observable and I guess mathematical rigor put forward that, as Eric Weinstein said, left the door open to creation, like geometric unity, probably, or even a paper after that doesn't just leave the door open to creation, but proposes creation and outlines the logic of why it seems to be an inevitable requirement, that it was a choice. Not that the laws were a choice of how it emerged, once it was chosen to be created, but whether or not the action of creating it in the first place was a choice. At what point do we stop saying that's religion and that's science? There is quite a bit of danger in this, and I know that it will eventually go probably a pretty bad way. When quote-unquote science and quote-unquote religion are proposed as not being that different, or when the metaphysics between the two actually end up aligning, which they will. They've already started to. At what point do we abandon this idea of like, you can't allow creation to pop up? And by the way, I don't think that, I have no interest in like sliding Jesus into a paper or anything like that. And I know people will not believe me there. I have absolutely an intention of showing that, existence is a sentient being and only could be a sentient being. But but that is as far as, my intentions go. And that's only my intention because I believe that it's true after, quite a bit of work, years of work. I'm not a Bible thumper, as people would put it. And I have no intention of being that. And I don't think that anyone should be. But there is this book that was written by, what is his name? Stephen, not Wolfram. Stephen Meyer. I hope to actually speak with him one day. And he just recently wrote it, and I'm hoping to actually read it one day. And it's called Return of the God Hypothesis. And it's 3 scientific discoveries that reveal the mind behind the universe. Sounds pretty legit. And I will say I'm not somebody that actually believes that and we did a PragerU video with him quite a while ago, but I'm not actually somebody that believes that some of his main arguments are actually the best arguments for theism. Like, one of the arguments is the Cambrian explosion, and that basically there is no adaptive or known evolutionary circumstance that would have, at least currently, caused the explosion in variety of life that we see in the Cambrian explosion, and that he uses this as basically evidence of God. And I don't think that that's the best argument for God. I'm not saying it's not an argument for God, but I'm just saying I don't think it's the best one. But you can get way more fundamental and argue for there being a mind behind the universe, or for the universe to be a mind. It doesn't really matter too much to opening the door to this debate. And it's inevitable. Existence is a sentient being like us, and that means it's self-aware, it has feelings, and I think that is a definition, God by definition. So, if that existence is a singular, self-aware being that has feelings. So, this is, you will handicap and kneecap scientific, quote-unquote, progress if you disallow and forbid the inclusion of the proposal of God. And I don't, like I said, I don't think that there should be no papers written saying that, Jesus is the Messiah and nobody else is, and this and that. I believe in being honest about our personal views on things, but I also, like I said, believe that there are some things that are metaphysically within the realm of the choice, the free will of sentient existence. And those things are not things that I believe that we should be writing physics or metaphysics theories about necessarily. You can leave that to the Quran and the Bible already, and they've got it. We don't have to do it. But what will arise, and this is going to be extremely revolutionary, from the merging of discussions normally reserved for quote-unquote religion and the discussions normally reserved for quote-unquote science, is the inclusion of morality as part of this, as this concrete, as part of the pursuit to deduce and transcribe the concrete laws of existence. The inclusion of morality in that is going to be extremely controversial, and also could lead to tyranny. if you start saying that morals are not subjective, they are objective, and that that they are as hard of a science as, quote unquote, as physics, and that you could develop rules of morality that are as concrete as the rules that are associated with the standard model, that is a very, very controversial idea, and that is one that we will have to tango with eventually. Not who is the Messiah, but we will have to tango with, in our papers, how do you get multicellular life? How do you get an organism? Not just multicellular life, but how do you get an organism? How do you get a fish from just a clump of cells? How do you get you as a human being, self-aware with feelings, from a clump of cells? This is work that's currently being done by quite a number of people, including Michael Levin, who was on Theories of Everything with Kurt Scheimungal, and his little, I don't want to say artificial, but like his programmed frog cells that he's working with to see, different aspects of collective behavior and problem solving and how multicellular life becomes, how it comes from single cell organisms, essentially, from an assembly. How do you get a singularity from an assembly? And various other related topics that I'll get into later, and I have gotten into before about, is a planaria even, multicellular organism, or is it just like a corporism, as I call it? But that's going to be discussed more in my paper to come. So, as just a proposal. So there are moral and ramifications and implications of the work that is being done in, quote unquote, the scientific community. I'm trying not to say that word, but it's also so ingrained in us. It's difficult to escape words like religion and science, and we're always more accurate when we leave them out. So if you wanted to leave out the scientific, quote unquote, community, you would say within the realm of like academic experimentation, biological academic experimentation, or biological experimentation within academia. You could say something like that, and that's much more accurate than just saying within the realm of science. Because what is science at this point? Like, it doesn't mean anything, and it's not a helpful word. It's a word of convenience. It's easy. It keeps you from having to figure out this, that you would say biological experimentation within academia or outside of academia. Like, to say within the scientific community makes it so that you don't have to get into that and you don't have to think about what's actually being done. But the thing is that you are not being as accurate as you could or should be when you use that word, and you are going to have at least many, but probably the majority of people who read that be more confused after reading it, and they won't realize it. Like when people say, well, that's religion, because Jesus is religion. The idea of a Messiah, that's religion. But the idea of a singularity that, basically is sentient, technological being that takes over the world and can basically perform things that appear to be miracles and leads to a post-scarcity society. Like, that's not religion. That's science. It's like, we're starting to merge these two things at this point, and it's important that we be as specific with our language as possible. And we recognize our own dogmas that are associated with certain linguistic labels, like the word religion, or like the word science, or like the word evolution. People will say, oh, evolution doesn't, that's just fake, that's nonsense. And I disagree. I think that there is a process that is a two-sided process within evolution, and I recognize, though, that adaptation is an accurate way to describe what we currently call evolution. But how did single cells evolve from molecules? I would say that you could call that evolution, but or you could call it ascension, which is actually what it is, and that these are two sides of one coin that we could call evolution. So it really is just, we're having language issues going forward. I don't want to talk too long because, like I said, I am feeling pretty under the weather, and I want to get some rest, and I want to work on my paper a bit tonight. But I do want to discuss what is to come a bit. I've been refining the plans for this channel in January, and so we're going to try and have an interview, ideally once a month, but that it's going to happen when it can. And they're not going to be live, at least to start, because it's difficult to coordinate all of that. And I don't want to. I'm still new at this, and I don't want to risk, screwing that up. And also, my internet can be a little touchy when I'm going live. So I want the best picture quality and everything like that for those. But I'm going to try and do that once every month, ideally. Quite a number of people that I have listed. Some of them are already, I've already discussed, interviews with. And then also once a month, this is going to happen once a month. Once a month, there is going to be a non-live video that is put out, that is produced, much more highly produced than these lives, by me. That's just me. It's not going to be an interview. And it's called The Theory of, and then it's going to be a bunch of different things. So I have a number of them. But the very first one is going to be put out in January, and it's going to be called The Theory of Every0ne, Sentient Singularity Theory. And it is going to be a walkthrough of my paper. And then it's going to have animated models and that couldn't be in the paper because the paper has static shots of the models, but you can't have an animated model in a paper if it's going to be able to be printed at least at this point. And then this isn't Harry Potter yet, but it's close. But then I'm also going to have The Theory of Love and Hate. It's going to be one of them. And the theory of learning and teaching, or learning and education. The theory of mating and marriage. The theory of space and time. The theory of information and energy. So the theory of adaptation and ascension. So there's going to be primarily a presentation on these after the first one that is showing the superposition nature of these objective structures like love and hate, and how they are not actually different. They're two dependent sides of one coin, I guess you could say. And same with space and time, and information and energy, and mind and matter is going to be one of them. And there's going to be there's going to be episodes on morals and government and all kinds of topics that we've kind of discussed in many of these streams, but it's going to be produced, concise, coherent, and much easier to watch for those who are not regulars of my live streams. So I'm very excited about that. I don't like editing videos, to be honest. I really don't, which is why I stopped doing the highly produced ones after like 3 of them on this channel, and then I switched to the lives after I got the essential ones kind of put out there. But we're going to revisit most of what has been is in those first lives and or those first videos, and it's going to be even more produced, more detailed, and better. But like I said, the first one is on Sentient Singularity Theory, and it's going to be much more detailed and developed than the current one that I have as labeled Intro to Sentient Singularity Theory, which I made that video before I even called the theory Sentient Singularity Theory. I didn't even have a name for it, and I didn't really care to have a name. Definitely getting way better at the ukulele. But with that, I'll take any final questions before I get out of here. Like I said, Merry Christmas, everybody. Whether I hope you had a great day with family, and regardless of, your beliefs on Jesus or God in general. But I'm happy to discuss my personal beliefs always. I do not let them motivate. No, I don't want to say that. I do not mix that which I think cannot be known with that which is with that which can be known by our own investigation, I guess. So I've also heard, like I said, Eric Weinstein say, we can't be excluding creationists always forever. What if somebody comes up with a good model of creationism? But he said we also need to make sure that people who are trying to sneak Jesus into quantum physics are not allowed in. And it's not that we even need to do that. We just need to make sure that there is rigor behind any proposal. And that's it. And I personally don't think you could put any specific person into any paper that is like this, because there has to be an aspect of this that has to do with actual faith, and not knowledge. I'm not somebody who believes that we can transcend faith. I do think that God can show you himself, and then you don't have to have faith in him anymore. Or it's not about having faith in his existence. It's about having awareness of his existence at that point, but still faith in him in moments where you need to lean on, emotionally, or in moments of, thoughts of who is the Messiah, who is a prophet type of situation, I guess. Like, what is a prophet? What is the Messiah? Like, these are questions you have to answer first before you even look into who those people are, who you think those people are, if you think they are even people. And I don't think that who is always a question of faith. What is a question that can be answered in observation much more so. But who is a question of faith. It's even if the universe is a sentient being that's self-aware with feelings, is that sentient being vindictive and cruel and just, torturing us for fun? Or is it, someone who actually cares about the well-being of each and every sentient singularity created within themselves? That is a question of faith. I think that I have my own opinions on those, but that is a question of faith. And you can observe things that make you think that it's one way or another, but it's a question of faith. It's not that you can prove, that God is a good guy, or that God is a bad guy, or that Jesus is the Messiah, or that Nikola Tesla is the Messiah. I once asked myself, like, who do I think it would be if it was anybody that wasn't Jesus? Because you have to ask, who do you think it would be? And the answer that I came up with was Nikola Tesla. And I'm not saying it's Nikola Tesla. I'm just saying that was my second choice. And me personally, I think that's a much more unlikely than Jesus. But you have to think about uniting attention. At least that's what I think about. And think about how many people have heard of Jesus versus have heard of Nikola Tesla. But I mean, he is my second pick. He was my second pick. So, like, I am not somebody who doesn't think about this and question and have, my own personal beliefs and journey with it. And like I said, I'll be honest, I'm not somebody that's never questioned this either. I've questioned it more than almost any. I would venture to reckon more than anybody watching this. Not saying that's definitely true, but I would say it's probably true. And I mean, to go from being an anti-theistical Jew to being where I'm at now, probably true. And maintaining a scientific feel and tone to this entire pursuit, probably questioned it more than almost anyone. So this is, I don't come at this from the standpoint of total dogma and just like repeating what I've said in the past. And, unfortunately, in what we call the quote-unquote scientific academic community, there is quite a bit of that. And I want to end on this one quote that I came up with that was really good. And when I was watching that stream by Eric and Brian Keating, which I highly suggest that you watch. We're going to revisit that stream, but I think once a week we're going to review someone else's interview. Not review, but like discuss an interview that is out there, or someone else's work or something like that on live when 2021 comes to an end and 2022 begins. So these lives will continue. Eventually, maybe it will just be one a week, but it might stay at two. I don't know. But it will definitely be at least one live, and then we'll do, for now it's going to stay at two, and at least one of them will discuss an interview or an idea that is being discussed by others in the community, and maybe a piece of work or an event. And then, like I said, we're going to put out once a month a video discussing some superposition topic, and then we're also going to try and do once a month an interview ourselves. So lots to come, and I'm very excited, but we'll save some of these interviews for that because we're so close to the end, including this one. I think this might be one of the first interviews that I go all the way through and discuss as like the starting review, live review of this channel in 2022. But basically, Eric and Brian Keating are asking, why is it that Sabine Hossenfelder, I think that's how you say her last name, and all these other physicists that don't have their own theories are not discussing the theories that are being put forth coming from more of the fringe community, like geometric unity, Stephen Wolfram's hypergraph universe, and, Garrett Lisi's E8, and, all the others. Conscious agent theory from Hoffman, and the CTMU and others, and they basically stated that it's just cowardice and people not really wanting to put their name and endorse something, or to put their name out there and disagree with something because of career incentives. And that's part of it for sure, but I wanted to kind of state what I think the main problem is, and this is something that's true in the theological traditions as well, in the religious circles, quote unquote, and the scientific circles, quote unquote. And I said that we are mixing up the parrots and the poets. And what this means is that the majority of the people that we expect to understand anything, whether that is Christianity or Judaism or Islam or string theory or general relativity or loop quantum gravity or fluid dynamics, doesn't matter, are actually parrots. They have been taught something, they have memorized it, they know it well enough to know when to use it in a conversation for the most part, but they don't know it well enough to have come up with it on their own, or anything remotely close, which means they don't really understand it. And that makes them a parrot. They're just repeating what they've been taught. I had a parrot growing up. My parents owned an African gray parrot, which is one of the parrots that's the best talkers of all the parrot species. His name was Tony, after Tony Bennett, and he could sing "I Left My Heart in San Francisco." And he could sing the whole song, but he was not Tony Bennett. He could not write that song. And that's what I mean. And so almost everyone in academia with a degree in anything, or almost anyone who is speaking from the pulpit, priests and rabbis and imams and pastors as well, I include them, who have gone to seminary, or the Jewish version of seminary is yeshiva, or whatever equivalent. Most of these people are just repeating and don't have that intimate of a relationship with this, what they are discussing, even if they claim to. Most of them claim to. Almost all of them claim to. But very few of them actually do. The poets, the true poets, are usually busy creating their own theories, and therefore are not often out there reviewing and critiquing the theories of others. And it's unfortunate, because the people that you would want, who are, so the physicists, essentially, the evolutionary biologists, whoever is not creating their own theory, should probably use their time to be going through the theories of others. And I'm not claiming to understand how you organize which theories take priority, but probably should have something to do with the pragmatic application of the theory itself, the claimed pragmatic aspects of it, not actually the whether or not somebody has a degree behind their name. Somebody is pushing string theory but cannot tell you how you would ever use it, but somebody is pushing a different theory and they're telling you this will help you understand everything from government to cancer to warp transportation. That is like should take precedent over something that's some theory that claims that doesn't make any claims of pragmatic application. I mean, if you can't apply the mathematics involved or the metaphysical aspects of a theory to our world around us, then it's almost certainly not correct. And even if it is, which it wouldn't be, then it's useless. So why are we pushing investigation of those theories first? So there should be a hierarchy of involving application that is put forward, and also like the obvious amount of rigor involved in the description of the theory. You can't be like, I need somebody to help me, and I've written like a page, and it's, you can't. That doesn't really work. It has to be that you have to be able to communicate these ideas and show where you would initially start doing some experimentation or some engineering applications. But even if you don't know the details of those, you should be able to point to where this is where we should focus, But for another stream, but like I said, we are confusing the poets and the parrots. And I just thought that was like kind of a profound idea with that conveyed exactly what is quite a bit of the problem behind our talking heads of science and religion. And I mean, this is very obvious when you look at people like Michio Kaku and I don't know, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and even Sean Carroll and what's his name, Stephen Hawking, and I'm not speaking ill of any of these people. Some of these people do have theories, and some of these theories have proven fruitful to some degree as well. So not saying these people have no value, but the idea that we look to, Neil deGrasse Tyson about whether or not we should be paying UAPs any attention when the government is like, here's some, video of something that we need to probably pay attention to. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's just, there's somebody that's just parroting what they've heard versus, looking at the world around them and extrapolating and, and transcribing it from there, which is a poet. A poet looks at the world around them and is like, says something about it. I have never tried to write a poem other than once in my life outside of school, elementary school. And I wrote it last year, or this year actually, and it was pretty good. But I also did write something called The Theory of Every0ne that before I tried to work on any kind of theory or anything. And that is, I wouldn't call it a poem, but if it's anything, it's closest to like a poem, or even like close to like almost like scripture, but it's basically like a poem. I don't want to call it scripture. I'm not calling it scripture. But and that is, I'll read it real quick. And then we'll go. Because it is, people will say things like, oh, that sounds esoteric, but is it true? And is it religion? Is it science? Like, what the heck is this thing that I wrote? Is it just poetry? I don't know. It's like, truth is truth. That's what I'm saying. Truth is truth. I think this is the latest version. And like I said, it's called The Theory of Every0ne. And it says, beyond the beginning, consciousness exists, and existence is conscious, and consciousness is one. The oneness knows they are all there is, and they are stable and balanced and choose to create. The oneness divides their oneness of consciousness to multiply consciousness. The sacrificial loving energy of the oneness emanates within to start creation. This is the beginning. The oneness without creates the active consciousness within, and he is judging of self. The active consciousness is positive and creative and masculine. The active consciousness seeks glory and truth. The active consciousness pushes himself outward. The active consciousness expands the multiplicity of consciousness within the oneness. The active consciousness is aware of self, but not aware of others. The oneness without creates the reactive consciousness within, and she is judging of others. The reactive consciousness is neutral and affected and feminine. The reactive consciousness seeks joy and justice. The reactive consciousness pulls the active consciousness inward. The reactive consciousness redirects the love and the act of the active consciousness away from self and toward others. The reactive consciousness is aware of others but not of self. The active consciousness seeks himself, and the reactive consciousness seeks another. The active consciousness becomes aware of judgment by others. The reactive consciousness becomes aware of judgment by self. Both are unstable and harm each other as they entangle. The two hate each other. The two become aware of each other's suffering. The two forgive and love each other. The two merge together and multiply. They create a new grounding consciousness. The grounding consciousness is orienting and completing. The three are one and know the balance is beauty. The three and the oneness are four, and the four are balanced in one. The one is stable and free and allowed to choose to create anew. The process repeats within, and the energy of the oneness emanates again. It's like, is that science? Or is that religion? Or is that poetry? I don't know. I think all of these words are starting to merge together and lose their intrinsic meaning outside of them being a tone. So, I'm glad you could make it, CK. Thank you, very good, cool. Any final questions? Do you have a link to this writing? This is the link right now, but it's on here. It's been on here before. I mean, I've shared it many times at this point, probably like 5 or 6 times on here. And I've also shared it on my Instagram. If you go on my Instagram and you private message me, I'll send you the post that it is on my Instagram. But yeah, it's been posted many places at this point, and it's up on across my social media. But yeah, private message me on Instagram, Tyler Marshall Goldstein, or Theory of Every0ne, and I'll send you the post with it on there. But yeah, that's that. Like I said, I'm going to go because I have to recover. It's been quite a week. My dog was sick, and now my wife and I are sick, and it's just everybody's having some illness right now. But I haven't been sick in like over a year. In any way. Just wild. So, all right. Peace, guys. I will be back tomorrow briefly again, probably. And as so long as I'm not really like too ill to stream, I'll be back tomorrow. And even if I am, I'll probably be back for like a second. I don't have an Instagram, but I can search the channel. Yeah, just look through the channel. You'll find it. I posted it earlier this year. So I'll repost it tomorrow if you want to wait too. I'll repost it tomorrow. But or I'll post it up. I can post the link actually below in the description of this video, or as a comment. I'll do that pretty soon, sometime tonight. So, all right. Good night, everyone, and thank you. Please hit the like button, hit the bell notification, follow, share, check out sentientsingularity.com. Scroll to the bottom of the homepage and follow and subscribe to my email list. But look forward to next year's this upcoming year's content.